Arirang Special.
The year 2017 has kicked off, full of hopes and expectations for the new year.
굳건한 안보와 튼튼한 경제, 미래 성장 동력 확보와 민생 안정, 그리고 국민 안전을 최우선 과제로 삼아 정부의 모든 역량을 집중해 나가겠습니다.
坚持和平发展，坚决捍卫领土主权和海洋权益。
Make America great again. Okay? You knew that one.
In North Korea, leader Kim Jong Eun also began the year with his annual address, touching upon his shortcomings and his determination to strengthen the regime's nuclear capabilities.
위대한 선군 대력자강의 위력으로 먹이는 전력.
우리는 미국과 그 주종 세력들이 핵 위협과 공갈이 계속되는 한, 그리고 우리의 문전 앞에서 연례적이라는 감투를 쓴 전쟁 연습 초동을 걷어치우지 않는 한 핵무력을 중추로 하는 자위적 국방력과 선제 공격 능력을 계속 강화해 나갈 것입니다.
In 2016, North Korea stepped up its provocations, heightening tensions on the Korean peninsula. In response, the United Nations issued fresh sanctions against the regime.
North Korea now will be facing a comprehensive sanctions regime, which will be much more difficult to get around, to evade.
从根本上来解决它的让它契合，恐怕
기본적으로 지금까지 북한이 취했던 그런 부분과 크게 다르지 않을 거다. 때문에 똑같이 나갈 거다.
From 30 experts in and outside of the country, we will get their take on what to expect from North Korea in 2017. Will it resort to past means of aggression, or will there be a turnaround? On the last day of November 2016 in New York, all eyes were on the United Nations.
populaire démocratique de Corée. L'ordre du jour est adopté.
UN Resolution 2321, which led to lengthy discussions, was adopted by the Security Council. It came 82 days after North Korea conducted its fifth nuclear test and was hailed the strongest measures yet against the regime.
This time, the Council has taken longer than ever before, nearly 3 months in responding to a nuclear test by the DPRK as a fifth such act.
The fifth test, which took place on September 9th last year, was considered more powerful and dangerous than others.
핵폭발 시험을 단행하였다. 핵탄두 폭발 시험이 성과적으로 진행된 것과 관련하여 조선노동당 중앙위원회는 북부 핵시험장에 우리 핵과학자 기술자들에게 뜨거운 축하를 보내어 왔다.
The international community called for even tighter sanctions, and as a result, the fifth draft of the resolution, complementing previous measures, was adopted. The main goal was to strongly limit Pyongyang's foreign currency earning operations and commit to concrete actions to do exactly as outlined.
"如果这些个制裁能够很好的执行的话，那么根据一些专家的推算，那么它要使使朝鲜的这个贸易减少1/4。也就是大约8亿美元左右的这么一个额度。
The first time, North Korea now will be facing a comprehensive sanctions regime, which will be much more difficult to get around, to evade. When sanctions were targeted against individuals or entities, it was relatively easy, as we see, for North Korea to set up another shell company or use other conduits to get exports out, and the proceeds, probably a good part of it, went to the illicit weapons programs.
Many had expected another provocation or a strong response from the North after the adoption, but Pyongyang remained quiet. The reaction from North Korean residents who had heard of the news from relatives overseas or acquaintances was also said to have been muted. Other than regular commentary, Kim Jong Eun also did not take any special action. The North instead appeared to focus more on the idolization of Kim, holding its first Workers' Party primary party committee chairs conference on December 23rd. What was Pyongyang's thinking behind this? Could it be a sign of concession to international pressure?
But in recent weeks, we've had an interesting situation where North Korea has been relatively quiet, maybe in part because of the South Korean political crisis, but also perhaps because of some uncertainty related to the future direction of the Trump administration.
제 생각에 두 가지 변수겠죠. 하나는 트럼프가 어떻게 노느냐 볼 거고, 하나는 한국이 어떻게 되느냐 볼 거고.
The North Koreans are planning to use their nuclear deterrent to bring about a kind of grand bargain with the United States, according to which the United States would withdraw American troops in return for North Korea's abandonment of nuclear weapons.
The streets of New York in December are bustling with holiday festivities. And at the heart of the city is Trump Tower, now a new landmark, being home to President-elect Donald Trump and his family. After Trump's election victory, local media have been following the president-elect's daily moves. The response from the American public about Trump's win is still deeply divided.
This is what democracy looks like. This is what democracy looks like.
Why are some strongly against his presidency?
Well, we're protesting because we have a president-elect who's sexist, racist, anti-immigrant, anti-gay. The list goes on.
Oh, my excellent.
Then there are his avid supporters.
Don't be a chump. Support Trump in his endless economic slump. Sounds like a good idea to me. Donald Trump, make America great.
Welcoming his victory, they offer messages of support in stark contrast to those against him. Among Trump's supporters, there were also North Korean defectors residing in the U.S. What message from the president-elect would have resonated with them?
모르긴 하겠지만 이제 북한 사람들은 좀 직설적인 게 있고 생각하고 있으면 그걸 그냥 표현을 하지 이렇게 애돌라서 얘기하고 이런 거 싫어하거든요. 그러다 보니까 이제 트럼프 대통령이 하는 그런 행동이나 얘기가 많이 와닿았어요. 그래서 그 공약 쭉 지켜봤을 때 트럼프 대통령이 좋겠다라는 생각을 했죠.
From very early on in his campaign, Trump made headlines for his unfiltered and aggressive comments. For some, this was considered unacceptable, while for others, it was a new outlet of their frustration. His views on North Korea were blunt as could be.
Winning so much, and
Trump also signaled he may be willing to hold talks with North Korean leader Kim Jong Eun.
America great again. We should be eating a hamburger on a conference table. There's a 10% or a 20% chance that I can talk him out of those damn nukes, because who the hell wants him to have nukes?
얼마든지 좋아하지요. 좋아할 겁니다. 대화하려고 하고 그런 대통령이 없었지 않습니까? 그러니까 북한 친구들이 제일 좋아하는 대통령은 클린턴이었어요. 지금도 그렇습니다. 대화하려고 하죠.
如果能够有两个领导人的会面，那么整个的朝鲜半岛的局势会有非常大的一种改观。因为从朝鲜方面，我认为不是障碍。朝鲜是希望跟美国会谈，希望建立外交关系，希望签订停战协定。
In the new year, new occupants will soon enter the White House. Preparations are underway for the inauguration ceremony, and although the Trump cabinet has mostly taken shape, in terms of North Korea policy, things remain unknown.
We really don't know. The main thing that we know about the Trump administration's likely policy is that there have been three main instruments that have been used in the past: dialogue, pressure, and deterrence. I'm sure that in one way or another, a Trump administration will also try to figure out the right mix on those instruments.
What many predict is that the North will face much stronger pressure from the new U.S. administration under the expected leadership of many hardliners tapped for key roles in national security and diplomacy.
President-elect Trump's posture is one of toughness. He is tough in all of his statements, and he is trying to use this posture of toughness as a deterrent to let North Korea know that if they engage in any provocations, he will respond forcefully. Hopefully this will work, that North Korea would realize that if they try anything, they'll pay a price.
On December 12th, a conference took place at the Korea Society located in New York's Manhattan. Without knowing which direction the Trump administration will take, experts have gathered to offer their advice on future North Korea policy.
Where is China? So I think it's quite important for President-elect to come out early to make a broader statement about commitment, U.S. commitment to Asia, but also to make a statement about the North Korea issue, forming China on this issue.
One of the key issues discussed at the meeting was Pyongyang's nuclear program, along with analyses on a wealth of other matters.
Are they genuinely linked? Is there the North is capable of reaching the United States with an ICBM that they would have confidence in? Unless we have very high confidence we can intercept that ICBM, then again the question is asked, what is that capability good for from the North Korean perspective? Acted on by many?
What most people were eager to learn is how the incoming administration will try to resolve the North Korea problem.
But I do think that this issue is going to take a higher priority for this administration, because the weapons threat to the United States has grown much larger than it was 5 years ago or even 10 years ago. So I think it will be a high priority for the new U.S. administration.
There is now a greater shared understanding that the North's nuclear and ballistic missile programs could directly threaten U.S. mainland. The Council on Foreign Relations listed North Korea and its weapons development as one of the high priority threats to the U.S. in 2017.
I'm concerned about the fact that North Korea probably can fit a nuclear weapon on its missile at all and deliver it to Japan, to South Korea, and sometime in the next 4 years to the United States.
We have the impression that their technology has been improving. Before this year, they had not been able to get up even to a 10 kiloton weapon. This year, we see with the fifth test that many estimates are saying it was about double that, so they had a bigger explosion. They were trying, however, pretty clearly to go for about a 50 kiloton weapon. So they're not where they want to get yet.
The North has been engaged in nuclear technology research since the 1960s under an agreement with the Soviet Union. In 1987, it started operating a nuclear power plant in Yongbyon, building a nuclear reactor and producing highly enriched uranium. In 1994, it declared it would give up nuclear development in accordance to a deal with the U.S. adopted in Geneva. But it soon turned out that this was not the case. In 1998, the New York Times published an article pointing to Pyongyang's likely revival of its nuclear weapons program, which helped cement existing suspicions. In 2006, the North officially announced it had conducted its first nuclear test, carrying out a total of 5 until September last year. Its nuclear capabilities have rapidly advanced over the past decade.
우리 핵무기 연구소 과학자 기술자들은 북부 핵시험장에서 새로 연구 제작한 핵탄두의 위력 판정을 위한 핵폭발 시험을 단행하였다.
그리고 더 중요한 것은 지금 북한이 가지고 있는 잠수함은 디젤 추진 잠수함이거든요. 그걸 가지고는 은밀하게 자기들이 원하는 지역까지 이동하기가 어렵다고 봐요. 그렇기 때문에 핵 추진 잠수함을 함께 건조를 하고 있다.
The possibility of the North developing nuclear submarines was captured on satellite images. On December 21st, Britain's Daily Mail published photos of suspected vessels near Sinpohang.
I think it's very likely that in the coming year, North Korea will conduct more missile launches of Musudan missiles, for example, that North Korea might conduct another nuclear test and otherwise behave in ways that are provocative.
On January 2nd in South Korea, a press conference by former North Korean Deputy Ambassador to the UK, Tae Young-ho, who applied for asylum in the South last year in July, stirred up a lot of global interest. After having been in the South for some 4 months, Tae made his first public appearance to share why he chose to defect. He also said he believes the Kim Jong Eun regime will work to finalize its nuclear development in the year 2017.
특히 김정은이 지난 5월 제7차 당대회를 계기로 한국과 미국에서 대통령 선거가 진행되는 정치적 변환기를 이용하여 핵 개발을 2017년 말까지 무조건 완성한다는 광신적인 정책을 채택하고
뭔가 미국의 트럼프 행정부가 강경하게 나온다든지 또는 이러저러한 내부의 어떤 또 어려움이 있다든지 그러면 그걸 돌파하기 위해서 또 실제 그 핵실험이나 미사일 발사 실험은 아직 필요가 많이 있어요.
Kim Jong Eun assumed power back in 2011 after his father, Kim Jong Il, died. Now having governed the country for over 5 years, Kim is considered to have solidified his position as the top leader.
I remember well from my talks to North Koreans, not defectors, North Koreans, in 2012, 2013, first year or so, they were uncertain. He was too young, too strange. Now he's quite popular. So once again, popular minds change.
In order to break out of the image of being a young and inexperienced leader, Kim carried out surprising measures. Unlike other leaders, he made public appearances with First Lady Lee Sol-ju to create a more people-friendly image.
Especially in the first few years of Kim Jong Eun's rule, gross mismanagement of his personality cult. The main problem of his personality cult, I think, has been his very ill-advised attempt to be both the military first leader and at the same time the personification of a more consumption-oriented, relaxed atmosphere. So you see him on amusement park rides, you see him rushing through water parks and aquariums and things like that. And that does not go down well with the North Korean people, who are used to their leaders projecting a more ascetic or self-denying image.
전하의 만고역적 장성택에 대한 조선민주주의인민공화국 국가안전보위부 특별군사재판이 12월 12일에 진행되었다.
But on the flip side of this friendly image, he used fear politic as a means to solidify his monopoly on power, rooting out others in the way. Kim has openly discussed purging officials in order to instill fear among those in the higher echelons. But how do North Koreans feel about these changes?
북한 주민들에게 그 김정은 정권이 환심을 사기 위해서 주민들의 간부들에 대한 불만이 높거든요. 그래서 상층부 숙청을 많이 하면 오히려 주민들의 지지를 받는다는 거죠.
북한의 정치 문화가 대체로 주민들이 수령, 즉 김정일, 김정은은 잘하는데 밑에 이제 간부들이 잘못해서 북한 사회주의가 기울어졌다 이렇게 생각하는 좀 오류가 있습니다. 김정은이 그걸 아마 교묘하게 이용하는지 아닌 게 아니라 밑에 사람들에게는 굴량미까지 풀어서 배급을 주면서 꼭대기를 이제 피해 숙청의 도가니로 몰아놓는데
One telling incident was the apartment collapse that we saw 2 years ago in North Korea, and the ability of North Koreans to communicate among themselves about that, which led to the unprecedented apology by the Kim Jong Eun regime for that. That is an example of perhaps other things that might follow where there seem to be more demands or certainly a registering. That doesn't mean that they're not seen as an all-powerful leadership, but it means that there are questions that have been raised.
At a small church in the city of Cheonan, Chungcheongnam-do Province, Pastor Kim Jung Eun owns this church and is also considered to be a father to North Korean orphans who have come to the south.
고아들이 오면 여기에 있을 거예요. 난방을 안 해놔서. 저 이제 텔레비까지 해서 컴퓨터 자재 다 있고 뭐 한 5천 권 있는데 지하에 있어요 지금.
The church is furnished almost like a home for the children who will come and live here until they become adults.
안 나오죠. 15명을 두 개도 직접 데려온 거죠.
Pastor Kim has been an advocate of North Korean human rights for 20 years now and has helped many defectors escape to the south.
이게 이제 보시면
With the help of Chinese people who can visit the north, Kim is able to identify the changes unfolding in daily life there.
연도별로 우리가 엄청나게 있어요.
성분의 애들은 또
이거 처음 공개하는 거예요, 이거 지금.
되게 좋네요. 평양이
아니야, 지방도시.
지방인데 저렇게 깨끗하게 된 데가 있어요.
그러니까 돈만 있으면 또 여기도.
There are also shocking scenes on tape.
이제 남매들인데 꽃제비들이 이제 쓰레기 더미 속에서 이제 그래도 형제들이 안 헤어지려고 이게 제일로 가슴 아프더라고.
Young children are spotted toiling away.
상당히 어린 아이들이네요.
네, 북한에 이제 아이들을 전부 다 이제 그 아이들도 그 노동에 갇히니까 아이들이 이제 산에 가서 그 산에 돌을 캐게 만들어요. 이 돌을 갖고 와서 아이들이 이렇게 해서 이제 조금 있으면 다른 년 북한에 이렇게 그 열차 그 인프라가 안 돼 있단 말이에요. 그러니까 그 돌을 갖고 와서 이제 학생들을 시켜서 이렇게 자갈을 만드는 거예요.
If any of these people want to defect, Pastor Kim helps them get out.
탈북 패러다임이 옛날엔 배고파서 탈북을 했다면 지금은 탈북 패러다임이 바뀌는 게 뭐냐면 제가 저를 구해달라는 사람 보면 돈이 없어서 탈북하는 게 아니라 북한에서 먹고 살기 괜찮은데 자식을 위해서 남조선으로 가겠다. 뭐 이런 사람 여러 명 제가 데려왔거든요.
Trends among defectors in 2016 were markedly different from the past. Overseas restaurant workers, known to be part of the elite in the north, managed to mass defect. Former North Korean Deputy Ambassador Tae Young-ho's escape itself is enough to highlight changes within the highest ranks in the north.
북한 주민들과 간부들이 일거수일투족을 감시하고 있으며 조그만 이상 기미라도 보이면 처형하는 공포 선행 통치를 실시하고 있습니다.
Did they fear being purged by Kim Jong Eun, or are there other reasons behind this? This is the office of the Committee for Human Rights in North Korea, an NGO in Washington, D.C. Executive Director Greg Scarlatorio has campaigned for human rights in the North for many years. But more recently, he has been closely watching some disconcerting changes.
Close to the Punggye nuclear test facility, extraordinarily close. One question that continues to be asked is whether there is a demonstrable connection between the political prison camp, camp labor, and the nuclear testing facility. We continue to look into this. Another trend, political prison camps close to the border with China, for example, Camp 22 in Haeryong, North Hamgyong province, ceased to function as political prison camps. They were shut down. Why? In the process of relocating those prisoners from Camp 22, thousands disappeared. We have had reports that many of them starved to death, many of them may have been killed. The bottom line is that while we are still working on figuring out what happened, they went unaccounted for.
A Kyohwaso is in effect a North Korean prison that punishes people according to the country's criminal law through hard labor re-education. The vast majority of prisoners suffer from violence, torture, and starvation. Many eventually die.
A Kyohwaso. This is not a Kwalliso political prison camp. This is a Kyohwaso. This is a re-education forced labor camp. There are about 4,000 men and 1,000 women held at this facility. Out of 1,000 women, 80% of them, are women forcibly repatriated from China, subsequently imprisoned in North Korea.
There are nearly 20 official re-education camps in the country. Tens of thousands of people face unspeakable violations of their fundamental rights. The fact that many prisoners are those who are forcefully repatriated after failing to escape adds to the problem. Their stories of suffering have been shared worldwide by defectors who managed to get out.
This continues to be our mission in order to enable the international community to remain focused on North Korean human rights. The investigation must continue, the outreach efforts must continue, and also networking, liaising with UN member states, UN agencies, government agencies in like-minded states concerned about the North Korean human rights situation. Networking with other human rights NGOs will continue to be extraordinarily important.
平壤建筑比以前要好得多，汽车也很多，反正每次去他们就觉得变化很大。
김정일 때보다 시장 경제가 더 발달을 했대요.
미래 상점에서 특별히 마음에 드는 것이
I would expect in North Korea this year is to be a year of growth, economic growth.
새로운 소리 이 땅의 아침과 저녁이 다르고 오늘과 내일이 다르게.
Dandong is the largest border city in China, facing North Korea. As the hub for trade between the two countries, some 600 North Korean and Chinese companies related to investment, tourism, and other fields are situated here. The number of Chinese residents here who rely on business with North Korea are set to reach up to 100,000 people. The Sino-North Korean Friendship Bridge that cuts across the Yalu River connecting the two sees dozens of trucks from either side pass through each day. In the late afternoon, Chinese trucks are busy packing up goods to send to the north. The boxes being loaded are set to contain gas stoves made in China.
这个燃气灶他们用的多吗？
这朝鲜从来
不用啊。那
是送电室，这个不是他。
啊，朝鲜人他们不用燃气灶啊？
饮食习惯不一样。
习惯不一样，他们平壤城市也不用燃气灶吗？
饮食习惯不一样，他们有天然气，他用。
Most of the trade that takes place is closely linked to people's daily needs. There has also been a surge in demand for construction material, and especially reinforcing bars.
你一天得搬多少次啊？他们这车去多少趟啊？啊？
These trucks go through a quick customs clearance and then head across the bridge to North Korea's Siniju. Traffic is busy on the bridge until access is sealed off once a day. Despite the 2 rounds of sanctions unleashed last year, trade is still busy on the border. The specifics of how much can be loaded and what items can go through have become more detailed, but most traders in Tandong agree they're not a great obstacle. Looking at the numbers, over the past decade, 5 rounds of sanctions have been implemented, but trade with China has stayed on an upward trend.
因为中朝贸易大部分现在已经是民生之间的这个贸易了，所以这个民生，比如说朝鲜需要中国的日常用品，然后生活用品，还有一些比如说这个电器，这些都是民生的，跟那个朝鲜的那个对朝决议案那个制裁案是没有关联的，所以呢，它不受这个影响，它的那个贸易自然会有所增加。
轻工业，特别是服装业这方面的增长速度呢，应该是比较大，但是我没有具体数字，因为它不属于这种制裁的一种，是属于民生的这种项目，所以贸易额呢有增长。
Most items spotted in Tandong were tied to people's livelihoods. The group of people here are Chinese drivers waiting to cross over to the north. You can see multiple travel passes for entry into the north issued by customs officers there. Despite the 2 rounds of sanctions last year, people here say the number of visits to the north remains steady. The goods sought out by North Koreans are also said to have become more diverse. One of the trade items that has seen higher demand is these cars. Second-hand vehicles are exported to the north and then transformed into taxis. When asked whether the recent sanctions would hurt trade, the overall sentiment was that there's not much to worry about.
就根本就不受那些什么影响，是不？
什么影响？
就什么北朝鲜就是受联合国什么影响？
这是民间贸易。
As the sun goes down and traffic begins to thin out, a train from Pyongyang arrives in Tandong. It's a trip offered once a day, and the train is usually full of North Korean residents. They are usually individual business owners.
자주 한다. 6월달에 한 번 왔다 갔죠.
아, 오늘은 회의하러 오신 거예요? 친구 만나러?
아니, 여기 뭐 서로 협력, 합작 그런 거 털어나러 나왔지. 나는 근데 지금 뭐 연길에다가 이제 가서 만들어야 되니까 연길 지금 이 같이 합작할 때가 기다린단 말이야.
Many newly affluent people in the north are expanding their businesses into Tandong, looking into opportunities in hotels, restaurants, and travel. In the city, there's also a travel agency that specializes in trips to the north. The company is mostly frequented by Chinese travelers and has a number of options for experiencing the north. Our crew sat down with an employee after explaining we were South Korean. We asked whether it would be possible to go on one of their tours along the Yalu River bordering North Korea.
就外国人也能去，韩国人也能去，对吧？是吗？韩国人哪能去北方？我听说有哎，刚坐船回来，坐船的时候。
Even though the tour is run from China, they explained it would be difficult for South Koreans. With the help of a different agency, we were able to get on a different boat. It wasn't recommended given the associated risks. Here and there, we could spot North Korean residents living in the border area near the Yalu River.
不能上岸，因为咱们现在整个已经存在朝鲜了，现在。
看在里面那两个，那是朝鲜民兵那几个啊。他在这个地儿，你注意看一下，这里有个朝鲜安保。
安保哪儿呢？
看没就在树底下，树底下这个有稻草。
哪儿呢？
看没有稻草这个位置。
The Yalu River is a route often used by those looking to escape the country. Border patrols have been beefed up after Kim Jong Eun came to power. But surprisingly, the soldiers who are in hiding approach the boat with visitors.
如果你要是有零钱的话，有10块20块的，咱可以靠过去给他，知不知道？这是朝鲜当兵的，朝鲜人民军。
The boat carrying our team also approaches the riverbank. We attempt to talk to the North Korean soldier.
하나 둘 셋. 네. 흑룡강. 반가워요.
춥진 않으세요?
가라. 더人走.
Having recognized the visitors are from the south based on the different accent, the soldier immediately turns around, unhappy with the encounter. Near the Yalu River, military homes for the soldiers can also be seen. For many in the north, these are considered nice, comfortable homes. Most living along the Yalu River are military families or fishermen, with many being more well-off than others. When travel season is in full swing, tourists are said to throw them money, snacks, and cigarettes. All, when sold in the markets, can bring in much more cash than the soldiers' wages. The catch around the Yalu River has become smaller, making it harder to sustain people's livelihoods just by fishing. On top of that, most still use conventional fishing methods. They use birds to fish for them, but then tie up the throats to prevent them from swallowing the catch. In the past, the fish caught would be put on the table to eat, but now they're sold at nearby markets in Tandong. Having gone through many years without sufficient food, people have come up with their own ways to provide for themselves.
북한 사람들 의외로 비즈니스를 잘하는 사람들이라고 보거든요. 옛날에 뭐 10년 전에 접한 바에 하면 굉장히 융통성이 있어요. 제가 접한 경험에 의하면 규정은 이런데 중국 사람들하고 조금 비슷한 면이 있어요. 규정은 이런데 뭐 이렇게 또 여러 가지 방안이 가능한, 얘기 가능한 이런 융통성인 사고방식 사람들이 많더라고요.
We meet a special person in China. Professor Che Ung-gu is Korean Chinese.
고려학회 회장.
Che used to be in the same dormitory as former North Korean leader Kim Jong Eun back when he studied at Kim Il-sung University. Kim at the time was taking the same economics class as Che and said the North's leadership was passionate about driving up economic growth.
만났을 때 첫 번째 제가 이런 질문을 했어요. 왜 경제를 배우느냐. 그러니까 뭐라고 대답을 하느냐 하니까 수령님께서 아버님이라고 안 합니다. 수령님께서 소련의 정치 경제학이 나를 돕지 못하니까 네가 가서 경제를 좀 연구해라. 그래서 와서 배웁니다. 그래요.
He said the North's technology and the heavy industry is what contributed to urbanization in the country.
근데 북한은 중공업이 기본입니다. 그렇기 때문에 그 사람들은 저도 많은 그 강철 공장들 다녀봤습니다. 기계 공장도 다녀보고. 그러니까 그 사람들은 그 강철을 많이 만들어요. 대포 만들던 거, 탱크 만들던 걸 아파트 만드는데 투입을 해버리면 되는 거예요. 철근으로 바꿔버리면 되는 거예요. 그렇기 때문에 쉽게 올라갑니다. 그 아파트도 좋고 지금 많은 놀랐어요.
The North's economy is still based on a state-controlled model, but is making greater steps towards development. Pyongyang increasingly looks like a modern developed city, and the country has seen surprisingly fast results in information technology, like with computers and mobile phones. Its airports, considered some of the poorest in the world, are also transforming. Duty-free stores are opening up to accommodate people's needs, more like any other international airport. Among the affluent, foreign cultural elements are quickly seeping in, and people no longer rely on the state for a means to sustain their livelihoods. A market economy is budding in the North.
김정은 시대에 들어와서 변화된 게 뭐가 있냐면 그러니까 김정일 때보다 시장 경제가 더 발달을 했대요. 그래서 실제는 사회주의 경제인데 실제 가보면 거의 다 시장에서 돌아간다. 그러니까 그쪽의 표현으로 하면은 장마당 경제. 그러니까 거의 다 장마당이 암묵적으로 허용된 상황이라고 그러더라고요. 그래서
순대도 팔고 나름대로 서로 장사를 위해서 막 그 싸움하는 모습들이 그 이제 공산주의보다는 자본 경제 서로가 팔으려고 옛날에는 상상도 못했던 얘기죠. 뭔가 장사를 해야 먹고 산다는 경제가 많이 돌아가고 있는 거죠.
Most of the goods and services a typical North Korean consumes today is obtained through market, and increasingly the market is the source of income, not employment in the state sector. Nevertheless, the country has failed to develop the rules and institutions of a modern market economy.
它也没有一个很强大的对于市场经济了解的团队进行这个改变，那改善这个环境，所以对他来说，怎么样控制市场，怎么样利用市场，这个对他们来说没有什么经验，所以我认为在新的一年当中，未来的这个朝鲜经济变化当中，他一定要正视这个朝鲜的市场的这个自由市场的样子。
But the international community is concerned that aspects of economic growth can in turn be used to develop nuclear weapons. That's why the UN Security Council has adopted even harsher sanctions against the country. But a lot of the effects will depend on China.
我们和朝鲜并不是属于这个同盟国之间的一种关系。那么现在经常说的话，就是一种这个正常的国家关系，是不是？或者以前我们曾经说过一种具有特殊的这个国家关系。所以说特殊嘛，因为我们和中国和朝鲜是近邻嘛，有1400公里的边界线，两国是山水相连的嘛，人员都有交往。这个是比其他的更特殊的地方。我觉得现在并不是说那种这个同盟，是不是？不是那种关系，这是我要说明的一点。
China is a member of the United Nations Security Council. This will have a bigger effect on the North Korean economy than any other sanctions to date.
That resolution, which was worked out largely by the United States and China, called for caps on the amount of coal that North Korea could export to China. So that was an important step, and that required China to be on board.
북한으로서는 지금 믿을 수 있는 거는 중국밖에 없어지는 거고, 또 그런 관계 속에서는 중국과 더 가까운 관계를 유지하기 위해서 여러 가지로 노력할 거라고 저는 생각을 합니다. 그런데
With Pyongyang's nuclear capabilities advancing by the day, more eyes are on what stance China takes. Each time new sanctions were rolled out, their efficacy has depended on actions by Beijing. The two countries have long maintained strong ties, explaining for China's reluctance so far in implementing strong punitive measures. But a noticeable change was seen from Beijing during the latest Security Council meeting. Are ties between China and North Korea not what they once used to be?
中国驻菲律宾的使馆正在进一步。
中朝友好的目的这种关系的同时，那么对朝鲜现在的搞核武器这件事情，我们不满意。这个是中国的一个社会的一个最主流的看法。
我觉得中国就是每次这个朝鲜进行核试验，还有这个导弹。发射导弹的时候，中国都在联合国表示强烈的反对，这是中国的一贯态度。那中国希望就是3月份开始，中国同意和联合国对朝鲜进行制裁。那么这次11月份也是这样的。
China has long had a pretty significant internal debate about what to do with respect to North Korea. Because on the one hand, China's policy with respect to North Korea's nuclear weapons program has been quite consistent. It's argued that the North Koreans should give up their nuclear weapons program and that the Korean Peninsula as a whole should be denuclearized.
China hopes to see peace and stability on the Korean Peninsula. But on September 5th last year, when China was hosting the G20 summit, North Korea test-fired a missile, raising questions about relations between Pyongyang and Beijing. How will ties between the two change in 2017?
Well, China doesn't particularly like North Korea. Kim Jong Eun's behavior has been pretty offensive to Xi Jinping as the leader of China. Many of the Chinese are upset with North Korea.
Kim Jong Eun has not met President Xi Jinping, and he's not visited China. And there is, one does not get the impression that the Chinese leadership hold Kim Jong Eun in high regard.
중국 내에서도 이제 북한에 대한 평가가 조금씩 달라지고는 있어요. 언제까지 북한을 감싸고 돌 것이냐? 북한은 이제 더 이상 우리에게 전략적 자산이 아니다. 오히려 전략적인 부담이다.
There are stronger calls for China to change its approach towards the north, in line with shifting global trends. But Beijing will no doubt remain important in maintaining peace on the Korean Peninsula in the year ahead. It also holds the key to bringing Pyongyang back to the negotiating table.
我们认为呢，制裁它不是目的，它只是一种手段。那么它的手段呢，就是让朝鲜回归六方会谈的这种老路，是不是？用这个谈判的方式。用这个和平的方式来解决这个问题，所以我们就是说和朝鲜制裁呢，是从这个目的出发来搞的，不是说把朝鲜一棒子打死。
中国就是对朝鲜半岛整个的政策就是不乱不战无核这么6个字，压力通过军事的一种方法只能加剧南北之间的一种对立的一种情绪。
Establishing peace on the Korean Peninsula through denuclearization. In order to attain this, what road should South Korea take?
우리가 사실은 어떤 입장을 취하고 어떤 정책을 취하느냐가 미국의 대북 정책에도 일정한 영향을 미칠 수 있다라고 저는 좀 생각이 들 수 있는 여러 가지 정황들이 좀 보이더라고요. 그러니까 이제는 저희가 좀 대북 정책을 좀 주도를 해나가야 되는데 저는 무엇보다도 정말 좀 실용적이고 실리적으로 좀 했으면 좋겠어요.
我觉得朝鲜半岛最关键的是南北关系，南北关系一定要改善。这个我认为只有南北关系改善了，朝鲜认为它面临的国际环境、对外环境改善了，它才可能这个降低自己的这个就是出现这种危险性行为的这种可能。
As people ring in the new year, many took a trip to Ojusan Unification Observatory. Despite facing times of turmoil and instability, they still hope to see peace between the two Koreas. Then what should be done to move one step closer to peace on the Korean peninsula? Each and every individual in South Korea shares the burden of finding greater wisdom for a solution.
I would say that above all, the immediate task of South Korea is to keep stability, to avoid unnecessary confrontation or ideally any serious confrontation.
친선과 협력, 화목하게 서로 도우면서 살자. 그거를 남북한의 정부가 바꿨으면 하는 게 바람이에요.
And one of the main issues from a U.S. perspective is that North Korea needs to reverse course and be willing to put denuclearization on the table. And so, the best way to peacefully resolve tensions on the peninsula would be for Kim Jong Eun to change his mind and come back.
하나는 우리 한국 사람들의 마음이겠죠. 우리가 지금 굉장히 중요한 건 역시 평화라는 것이다. 또 그 평화를 위해서 우리가 어떤 방식의 지도자가 필요한 거고 어떤 방식의 정치가 필요한 거고 남북 관계의 어떤 평화적 정착이라는 것 자체가 동북아 전체의 평화와 관련이 있다라는 관점을 저는 좀 가져야 될 거라고 생각을 합니다.
In the year 2017, what choices will North Korea make, and what path will it follow? Whatever it is, the hope is that it will be the right decision towards realizing peace on the Korean Peninsula.